Cameron Myers was supposed to lose this race. All summer long, this 20-year-old had been the guy who almost got there. Second place in Stockholm, third place in Oslo, beaten by bigger names, bigger reputations, bigger resumes. So when he lined up in Paris against a field stacked with a former world champion and some of the fastest milers on the planet, almost nobody outside Australia was watching him. By the time the bell rang for the final lap, every single one of them wished they had been. Let's back up for a second. Cameron Myers is from Canberra, and he is still only 20 years old. He had already shown flashes of brilliance as a teenager, the kind of talent that makes people in Australian athletics start whispering his name early. Earlier this year, he went out and won the Australian Championships on his own, running 3 minutes 29.85 with nobody to push him. That told everyone he had the raw speed. What it didn't answer was whether he had the experience to beat the best in the world when the race actually got hard. So, he went out and tested himself against them. He ran the Diamond League circuit in Stockholm and finished second. He went to Oslo and finished third. Both times, he was right there in the mix with the leaders. Both times, someone with more experience found another gear he couldn't answer. Yared Nugus beat him. Timothy Cheruiyot beat him. These aren't just names. Nugus is an Olympic medalist. Cheruiyot has been racing at the top of this event for years. Losing to them isn't shameful, but it does ask a question. Could Myers actually beat a field like that? Or was he still a step behind the men he idolized growing up? And here's the part that made it sting more. The Commonwealth Games in Glasgow were less than a month away, and Myers was already entered in the mile. If he couldn't find a way to close out a race against this level of competition now, what was going to change in 4 weeks? That was the question hanging over him walking into Paris. Paris was not a forgiving place to try and answer it. The Diamond League meet at Stade Charlotte almost didn't happen at all. A heat wave was threatening to shut the whole thing down before it even started. But the meet went ahead, and the conditions ended up producing one of the most absurd nights of times this circuit has seen in years. Records were falling everywhere that evening. A Diamond League record in the men's 400 meters. A Diamond League record in the women's 800 meters. By the time the 1500-meter field stepped onto the track, the entire stadium was already buzzing, expecting something big to happen. And that field was brutal. Jake Wightman was in it, a former world champion who knows exactly how to close out a championship race when it matters most. Azeddine Habz was in it too, racing in front of his home crowd in France with every reason to push the pace. Reynold Cheruiyot was also lined up, part of a Kenyan middle-distance lineage that rarely loses big races. This wasn't a field where Myers could simply show up, run his own race, and hope for the best. Every single one of these men had been on bigger stages than this 20-year-old, and every one of them knew how to make a race hurt. If something special was going to happen for Myers, it had to happen against the best milers alive, on one of the hardest nights possible to deliver it. So here's how it actually played out. The pace was honest from the gun. No games, no waiting around. 400 meters in 55.14 seconds. That's a brutal opening split for a metric mile, the kind of pace that punishes anyone who isn't ready for it. 800 meters came through in around 1 minute 52, still scorching. This wasn't a tactical shuffle where everyone waits to unleash a sprint at the end. This was fast, and it stayed fast the entire way. By the 1200-meter mark, something had changed. Myers wasn't sitting back in the pack anymore, waiting to be told what to do by faster men. He was at the front. He hit that mark in 2 minutes 47.35 seconds, controlling the race himself instead of reacting to whatever Wightman or Habz decided to do. This part matters more than people realize. Leading a race like this from the front is one of the hardest ways to win. There's nowhere to hide and nobody to draft off. Every runner behind you can see exactly where you are and time their move accordingly. Most milers at this level prefer to sit and kick, saving their legs for one explosive burst at the very end. Myers did the opposite. He made the race honest the whole way through, daring everyone else to come and get him. Then came the final 300 meters, and this is where the whole season flipped on its head. Instead of getting outkicked the way he had in Stockholm and Oslo, Myers attacked. He didn't ease off the pace to save something for the home straight. He pushed harder, right when the race usually breaks runners like him. Habz tried to go with him. Wightman tried to go with him. Neither one could. The gap that opened up in those final meters wasn't small either. It was the kind of gap that tells you one runner found something the others simply didn't have left. Myers ran the rest of that field into the ground. Picture it for a second. A 20-year-old out front with a former world champion breathing down his neck, and instead of hanging on for dear life, he chose to make the race even harder. That's not the move of someone hoping to survive. That's the move of someone who already knew he had more to give than everyone else on that track. He crossed the line in 3 minutes and 28 seconds flat. To put that in perspective, the Australian and Oceania record for the 1500 meters belonged to Oliver Hoare, set back in 2023 at 3 minutes 29.41. Myers didn't just break that record. He demolished it by more than a second, which in an event measured in fractions of a second is enormous. Behind him, Habz crossed in 3:29.8 and Wightman followed in 3:29.95. Two of the best milers in the world, both running season's best times of their own, and Myers still beat them by nearly 2 full seconds. He also pushed his own world-leading time for the year even further out in front of everyone else on the planet. At 20 years old, Cameron Myers is now ranked 12th on the all-time list for the 1500 meters. 12th in the entire history of the event, against runners who had decades more experience than he does. And this isn't a one-time spike either. This is part of a pattern that's been building for years. As a teenager, Myers already held age group records in the mile, the 1500 meters, and the 3000 meters, breaking marks that used to belong to Jakob Ingebrigtsen, one of the best middle-distance runners alive. He ran a sub-4-minute mile before he was even old enough to vote in most countries. Paris wasn't a breakthrough out of nowhere. It was the moment all of that early promise finally caught up to the world's best. For Myers, this record meant something beyond the stopwatch. Oliver Hoare wasn't just a name in a record book to him. Hoare, along with fellow Australian Stuart McSwain, was someone Myers looked up to growing up, the kind of runner whose times he probably studied as a kid, dreaming about racing at this level himself. He said as much in his own words after the race, that getting the Australian record meant so much specifically because those were the athletes he idolized. Think about that for a second. He didn't just break a record sitting in a book somewhere. He passed the runners who made him want to do this in the first place. That's not just a fast time. That's a kid closing the gap on his own hero. Remember that question from earlier? Whether Myers could find another gear before the Commonwealth Games. Whether he could actually beat the best in the world instead of just keeping pace with them. He just answered it in the loudest way possible. Glasgow is now less than a month away, and Myers will be lining up in the mile against the best the Commonwealth has to offer. He said himself that the win gives him confidence heading into a great field there. But after what just happened in Paris, confidence might be an understatement. Every single runner he lines up against in Glasgow now knows exactly who they're racing, and exactly what he's capable of when the race gets hard. Cameron Myers didn't just win in Paris. He obliterated the Australian 1500-meter record, and at 20 years old, he might just be getting started. Who do you think challenges him in Glasgow? Drop your prediction below.